Living in London. The pros and cons. Anytime, any day. I won't hide my love for London as one of the world's most famous cities. England's most populous metropolis city and capital, and the home of the British royal family. The cosmopolitan city is the dream of many who have read books and watched movies or videos about London. It's a very influential city, such that when it sneezes, other cities in the UK and even Europe catch a cold. That's what living in London means. Before anyone accuses me of being fanatical about the city, I want to assure you that I know that London suffers with what most large cities suffer. I'm not unmindful of the fact that some people will live in any city but London. Sometimes you may find some justifications for the opinions of those who don't like London. To such ones, living in London is not among the options. However, it's not as bad as it's made to seem by the pessimists. When moving to London, you only need to condition your mind toward the reality that awaits you. That is why I want to call a spade, by showing you in this video the pros and cons of living in London. So, let's start with the pros. The pros of living in London. 1. Tons of history and famous locations. In central London alone, you can hardly go anywhere without passing famous historical buildings. Living in London can increase your knowledge of history and architecture. Westminster Abbey, where kings and queens are crowned still today, and the burial place of many famous figures is one of those locations. Others are Southwark Cathedral, Trafalgar Square, Albert Memorial, Big Ben. We also have the Tower Bridge exhibition, the Brunel Museum, Churchill's War Rooms and the museum, Baker Street and Charles Dickens Museum. These locations have very rich and fascinating history surrounding them. 2. Great and free healthcare, with some exceptions. This is another pro of living in London. The prospect of accessing the UK's free healthcare system is a reason to consider moving to London. The city's emergency ambulance network is the busiest in the world. This means anytime and anywhere you have a medical or other emergency or you need routine medical care, you'll be attended to within a reasonably short time. The great thing there is that you won't go bankrupt for the special care. What are we talking about here? It's not an exclusive right of a few. It's available to everyone working in London and the country as a whole, either as an employee or a private business owner. Inasmuch as you're residing legally in the city, you'll be under the London health cover. Hardly would you find better healthcare anywhere else. 3. It's safe. While the city's not completely crime-free, it is relatively safe. In most areas of London, you can sleep with your 2 eyes closed. CCTV cameras are mounted everywhere. London's city police are very professional, proactive and responsive. And this explains why most reliable statistics are not painting London so black in terms of crimes. Since they're feeling safe, Londoners' mental health is better for it and life expectancy is comparatively high. This is one of the pros of living in London. You may do your due diligence yourself on whenever you're planning on moving there. 4. Multicultural. If you want to learn about different people's cultures and you want to avoid travelling to their lands to minimise costs, consider moving to London. In London, you'll have the real opportunity of living in a multicultural society and observe firsthand how people of different cultures enjoy their way of life and practice those cultures. You can even learn how to prepare and eat different foods that interest you in this one of the most culturally diverse large cities the world is blessed with. If you have an ear for language, you have an opportunity of selecting how many languages you're capable of absorbing among the over 300 different languages spoken in the city. 5. Public transport's great. You don't need to have a car of your own before you get around conveniently in London because of the city's excellent public transport system. It's incredibly easy to move and do your business so far you're able to keep with the schedule. The city's well connected by road, water, air and rail. The model underground train system in the world, the Tube, that covers 250 miles, is divided into 9 zones, being plied by 11 lines. Apart from that, a good road network is full of buses of different categories that will take you anywhere in the city. All these are in addition to the 6 airports serving London and its local environments. That's a pro of living in London. 6. Job opportunities. Don't forget that London is also an industrial hub of the UK. For that reason, plenty of workers will be needed in a city with so many industries. So, if you're a native English speaker or you speak English well as a second language, a lot of opportunities are there for you to land a dream job. You'll not have so many problems communicating and making connections that lead to jobs. That's why Americans, Australians, and Canadians consider London a popular place in search of greener pastures. Besides, London is also a nice place to start a business. Several rankings include the city among the top 10 in the world to do business. The favourable tax policies and availability of markets are among the reasons why London is a choice of industrialists. Now, if it's a good place to do business, have a job, which naturally accompany businesses, will be there aplenty. Now to the cons. The cons of living in London. 1. Londoners are very cold. The truth is that Londoners are known for their polite culture. However, they're often seen as taking their politeness to an excessive level, such that they can become very cold. For instance, no one will talk to you on the tube. Since it's considered rude and daring to look at someone directly, eye contact is also a taboo that can incur wrath. For that reason, the city may be too impersonal for your day-to-day experiences. This is a big con for anyone considering London as one of the places to live. 2. The weather. Unfortunately, London weather can be depressing, and that's another con that must be considered. The weather in London can get you down for a while when it presents weeks of dampness and darkness. That's why London has high rates of various forms of depression. This is in addition to the fact that the weather is unpredictable and unstable. It makes it somewhat difficult to plan your days and weeks in London. 3. Too expensive. This is an unarguable, ugly fact about London. The cost of buying a house or even renting in the city is prohibitive. Meanwhile, the closer you are to the centre of the city, the more expensive it gets. When you factor in the cost of food, drinks, transportation, utilities such as electricity, water and the internet, it'll be more obvious that London is too expensive, and that's one of the great cons of living there. 4. Too crowded. London is not really overpopulated, but you'll find a crowd everywhere. An example of this is the cheap and efficient underground train service, the Tube. During peak commuting hours, it's usually overcrowded. Also, this lack of personal space makes queues the norm in London. You would hardly have smooth commuting and shopping without having to wait in line. 5. Getting around costs a lot. Another con of living in London for most folks is that getting around costs a lot. For those relying on public transportation, which is fine and runs smoothly, things can be terrible when there's a tube strike or when maintenance or repair work is being carried out. Even those who can afford to drive their cars find it quite expensive with the introduction of congestion zones. Traffic congestion can be frustrating for London drivers, and this strikes out moving to London as an opportunity for those who enjoy driving their personal cars. 6. Air pollution. Sad to say and admit, but London's a very polluted city. The air is polluted, no thanks to industrial wastes or smokes, and the high volume of fumes produced by vehicular movements. Also, some parts of the city are just dirty. Well, this is a major characteristic of large cities, and it's just a con of moving to London. You'll agree the analysis in this video is objective enough and not too one-sided. As such, you can be aided in making your decision about living in London and in knowing what you need to know and probably put in place before moving to the big city. Whenever it's time to make your decision, do enjoy your stay there. Thanks for watching this video, and don't forget to subscribe, comment, and turn on the notification bell.